ask permission from Venerable Ajahn Anan, the senior monks at Wat Mapjan, the other monks, for permission to speak on this important occasion of Venerable Ajahn Anan's 69th birthday, and blessings to all the laity. So today I have a very good opportunity to share a few teachings, or maybe just a few stories that I remember of my time when I was in Wat Mapjan. So currently now I'm in Sydney, Australia. Monastery here is Bodhisattva Forest Monastery, be considered, I guess, a branch of Wat Mapjan. And so I couldn't make it for this year's birthday to be there personally, but Venerable Ajahn Anan has asked me to have this session and just share with you a bit of Dhamma, and hopefully it can be for your inspiration in your own Dhamma practice. So today I'd like to just begin with recollecting of how fortunate we are. This is an online meditation retreat led by a Kruba Ajahn, a great teacher, Venerable Ajahn Anan, who's had the kindness and compassion for us all, and he's made this possible, and many of you are able then to come and join from your own countries. Maybe it's almost like being there in person, and we all have faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. You all have interest in Dhamma practice. We're all able to join like this. For myself, I'm recollect that I'm very fortunate that I was able to go to Wat Mapjan and ordain there. It was about 17 years now, and Venerable Ajahn Anan had the kindness and compassion to accept me, train me, and I had the good fortune to be able to attend on him for almost 10 years. And if we maybe go back a bit more, all this online retreat, these sessions on Zoom were possible from 2014, where Venerable Ajahn Anan went to the meeting, the annual meeting in Wat Nong Papong in June of 2014, and it was his idea to start having a regular weekly session on Fridays and to Singapore. And at the beginning, it was just that NDR center. And he asked me to contact them. And so he contacted them, and he basically said that he wanted to do this, and I guess the junior monks just had to kind of make it happen. And back then, it wasn't like these days. The internet was definitely no good. I think we used a phone maybe for that connection, and having to find the software and basically trying out every, video conferencing software at the time, and found that Zoom was the best one. I just looked it up, that Zoom only started in 2011, so you can see how early it was that we begun this. And so we started the session, and then Banda Uttama joined, Kittarama joined, and one other place, I can't quite remember the name. But you could see the kindness and compassion of Venerable Ajahn Anan, that he could see the benefit of this technology, and was willing to share the Dhamma, spread the Dhamma in this way. And he also had the determination, or you say the satya, to carry it on every week, even when there was times when he was ill, when he had his heart problem, but he still carried on with it. And on the outside, you couldn't really tell that he was, tired and maybe not in the best shape. Basically, he said to us that you wouldn't be able to understand what he's going through, but he had the endurance, the patience, and kindness and compassion to continue it. I remember even when he went to Australia, they'd bring some of the equipment and they streamed it from Bodhikasuma, the center in the city, to keep it going, and so people could keep joining. It was that type of, you could say, determination that he had. And so we're very fortunate that then after COVID emerged, it was straight away that the compassion was to have this session every day, and he could give teachings. I'm sure many of you benefited from that, so you're very fortunate. Whereas maybe other places had to adjust to having different technology. We'd already done it for many years already. So just reflecting on that, so this was able to arise, that these retreats could happen. And so we have a lot of gratitude, and especially today is the day where I'll be talking a bit more about my experiences in Wat Mapchan, because hopefully, I'm sure all of us, it's kind of, we're all have the faith here in the Kruba Ajahn and Venerable Ajahn Anan. So hopefully some of this can inspire you. But just reflecting on all these good things that we have going for us it's kind of, we're very fortunate, and it's like we shouldn't, it shouldn't be hard for us, to grow and develop our minds, to have already this much faith, confidence in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, in the Kruba Ajahn, that we should be able to put these teachings into practice, and that we should be able to use all our experiences in our life and use them to reflect on and to understand more about the Dhamma through this, understand more about suffering. And whenever it arises, we experience it, we should be able to learn from it. We take it as something that, this is something we're going to practice and learn and develop wisdom from. It's within our capability. We've got everything going for us, including our mindfulness and wisdom. And so just reminding ourselves of this, and this should kind of inspire us to keep putting in consistent effort into our practice and doing retreats such as this. We are very fortunate that we can say we have the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, like we heard earlier in the talk that Venerable Ajahn Anan gave earlier this morning. From what I notice is that every birthday he'll always recollect Ajahn Chah saying of how, this is the tradition that Ajahn Chah had, and they would go and respect Venerable Ajahn Chah on that occasion, and he's reminding of, all this could arise because of the barami of the Buddha, and so all of us are so fortunate in that way. The Buddha said that if we take the Buddha as our best friend, then we can rely on him to take us out of suffering. So we all have the Buddha as our best friend, and we all have Venerable Ajahn Anan as our, you can say, in one way, Kalyana Mitta, our good friend, that he imbues all those qualities that the Buddha said of a good friend, that they are well respected, lovable, they give us deep teachings, they're interested in our well-being, they take us away from the bad path and lead us onto the good path. They are willing to admonish us even if it's sometimes harsh. And these are good qualities that I've seen, that we can take Venerable Ajahn Anan as our good friend. And also having a Kalyana Mitta like this, it leads us to be taken out of suffering, or we are following the Noble Eightfold Path. Like we'll hear in many of Venerable Ajahn Anand's teachings of Sila, Samadhi and Panya. He's always trying to push us to put effort in to the practice in that way. And the Buddha also said that there's three people that are very helpful to one, and that is a person who helps one to take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. The next is one who helps us to understand, you can say, the noble truths into suffering, the cause, the cessation, and the path leading to the ending of suffering. And the third is one who helps us to become liberated, ending the defilements in the mind. So this is again another, we can reflect that this is something that's very helpful for us, and that again that we get from all these teachings from Venerable Ajahn Anan. And the Buddha also said that someone like this is just very hard to repay. Even if we give our homage, our veneration, we greet, we give and offer the four requisites, it's still very hard to repay all that helpfulness that we've received by being able to take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, being able to seek more clearly into the Four Noble Truths, and of course leading to liberation and the ending of suffering. So I want to talk today a bit more about this puja that we say is a padipada puja, giving our practice as homage. So puja has a few factors to it. You could say the one part is this offerings and veneration. One part is the feeling love, concern, feeling closeness. Another part is the bowing, the forms of respect. And the other part is the recognizing the virtues and the goodness that that individual has, and respecting and worship, or maybe not worshipping, and giving them puja, homage, because we recognize those virtues. And so the first virtue is metta. Metta, some of you may have been to Wat Mapjan. I've heard many people say that they step through the front gate and they already feel this, they can say something or metta or something there. And I'd like to think that it's Venerable Ajahn Anand's metta, or the power of the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha that is imbued in that place. But to talk about metta is, we translate it as goodwill, friendliness, love, even loving kindness. There's all these words, but metta is one of those qualities that is very important, very fundamental to the practice, to our minds. It's considered a long-standing, basically it's never wrong. No wise person would ever argue that metta is something you shouldn't have, that you shouldn't develop. So it's always kind of right. And it leads to being free from wanting to harm, having any ill will. And I'm sure you've heard this in many talks about metta, but specifically want to just see some factors or some instances of this metta that I personally felt from Venerable Ajahn Anan, and I'm sure many of you who've maybe been close to him have also experienced. The first part is, I could say, the care and concern that he would have to others. And if you're in the monastery, he has a very caring, he's always looking out for any monks that are sick, or concerned about how this and that monk are doing. maybe the people in the kitchen who stay there, he'd be concerned about their welfare. Maybe people visiting from overseas, he'd be looking out, making sure they've got proper accommodation, etc. Or maybe the parents of monks come, he's willing to give them time and to inspire them in Dhamma. So there's all this care and concern. For myself, I had a time when I was first ordained there, and I remember that after the first rains retreat, that Venerable Ajahn Larry gave the teaching to the monks that after the rains, you should follow what Ajahn Chah said of putting up your umbrella net in the forest, even in the monastery, you should do that. So in other words, get down from your kuti and stay under a tree. And so, very inspired by that, so I put up my umbrella net near the Bodhi tree, which these days is a bit not so forested, but back then it was all grass and you could stay there. And so I did that, and then I think it was like 15 years later or something that one senior monk came to tell me that, back then I was massaging Venerable Ajahn Anan, and he told me, there's Larry's out there putting his cot up there, go check on him. And then so the monk went to go check on me, and he came back to Venerable Ajahn Anan and said, he's meditating there. And so he had nothing to worry about, or maybe you could say, fortunately, I was meditating or something. But he's just seeing that, concern that I'd be okay, especially just coming from Australia, maybe not used to, you could say, living under a tree. But yeah, that's one of the concern, and many people would have experienced something like this. Sometimes he's writing personal letters or messages maybe these days to people. Remember once someone who had cancer, and they were very worried and wishing for blessings, and Venerable Ajahn Larry told me to translate a letter for them, just saying that don't lose hope. You think of do your morning and evening chanting and ask the Buddha for your blessings and environment to be able to overcome your sickness. And something like that, maybe it's just a small thing, but I think it really inspired that person, and he overcame that sickness as well. The next part of metta is maybe encouragement. I feel like he really encourages us to continue on developing goodness, inspiring us to keep practicing. You could see sometimes on big days, there's many, maybe 1,000 people, and he would take the time to go into the kitchen area in the monastery, see that people are, maybe washing dishes, cleaning up, basically inspiring them that their self-sacrifice there to volunteer to help is really meaningful. And then people, when they see him, they're very inspired and sort of uplifted that the great teachers come to personally sort of look on us, look over us, and they're very happy to do all those things. But he would take the time to do that. Going for alms in the morning, making sure that people had chances to make merit and goodness every morning, every day, when people would come very early to wait there for him and the monks there, giving them encouragement to do that type of goodness as well. In the practice as well, maybe finding different methods for us to keep going in our meditation. I remember one retreat that we had, he had us to, and all the lay people as well, to hold a cup of water as a way to develop mindfulness, a full cup of water. So we had to try to sit there and try to, I guess that would stop people from falling asleep in their meditation. Maybe this was a daytime session where maybe people might be a bit more drowsy than usual. So I remember we had to try that out. There was once when he would really, in the evening chanting, he would turn around when we're sitting meditation and lead the group. That's another inspiring sort of thing, that helping people to practice. And he'd get out the sort of a whisk, you could say, that the monks use for the blessing, not to hit us or anything, but just to just tap it gently on his hand. If people were, anyone, including the monks, were sort of nodding off, and then you know that he's watching, sort of, and you'd be up sitting straight like this. So that's just another way of his sort of kindness. There was one rains retreat where he was very, you could say, trying to uplift the monks' practice a lot. And he'd said to us that, the kilesas are testing him, the defilements are testing him if he's able to overcome them enough to lift up the disciples' practice. Basically, the defilements of everyone were testing him if he was good enough to sort of uplift his students to overcome them. But yeah, there's all these sort of inspiring stories. So we had, sometimes even if monks had doubts in the practice, he'd also be able to reassure them. Monks would come and maybe, having a sense of self, you could say, their problems were so important, coming there and he'd have to sort of solve it right now. And he'd just say, just keep watching it, keep watching it. And it's true, you watch it, and then it passes. And that problem could go away by itself. Maybe he's had a lot of experience as well about, sort of monks' needs and things, but that teaching of just watch it, and something we can use ourselves as well in our own practice. Things may come up, very important, things that have to be solved, just keep watching, they'll pass on their own, including doubts. Sometimes there's, if monks have sort of aversion, or they've got, maybe to someone else, he'd bring up different teachings to try to help them. In the teaching of, take up a teaching, just imagine a mango, you just eat the good part of the mango, the rotten bits, just throw it away. In that way, when you're dealing with other people, only look at the good parts, take the good parts, don't take the rotten bit, just throw that away, that's of no use. So it also very skillful methods as well that he'd use of maybe for monks to make determinations in their practice, maybe chanting Itipiso 108 times, walking around the stupa, the chedi 108 times, different things to sort of uplift people's practice and make them, you'd find the value of that. And basically you could say it comes down to that, giving us inspiration that we can do it, we can improve our minds, we can basically see the paths and fruits of Nibbana. It should be something that we all can do, and when we hear that from the teacher, we're more inspired then to put more efforts. Maybe it becomes a bit closer to us and we feel like we can really get there. And sometimes his kindness, his metta, was to us personally, but not to the defilements. In this way, I mean that some of the things he'd suggest to you maybe would go against the defilements, and you would feel very sort of, it'd be tough to do basically, but it'd be for your own benefit. There was once one monk, he shared the story to me, the Thai monk, and he had made the determination to practice staying up all night, that we call Nesa Chik in Thai, or Nesa Chik, or Siddha's practice. And so in the Ajahn Chah tradition, we kind of practice that through the night, but he had made the determination to do it for 1 month. And so every night he'd be practicing like this, and he told me, he was counting down the days. So he had, from 30 down to 4 days left, and he's like, okay, now, I'll be able to rest properly at night, etc. So he's looking forward to it. And then on that 4th day, he said that Venerable Ajahn Anan called him over and said, do you want to see the Dhamma? And then this monk, he said he thought to himself, if I answer no, it's kind of very disrespectful and maybe bad karma as well. But if I answer yes, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get something that's going to be tough to do. And so he said, yes, Ajahn Lampor, I want to see the Dhamma, or he just said yes. And then Venerable Ajahn Anan said, okay, good. Keep the practice up for another 3 months. And then this monk could only answer one word, which was krap. If you know any Thai, if you just say krap, that means okay, yes. So sometimes he'd be pushing, but of course that monk had that inspiration to push him further, and because out of his respect for the teacher, he could push him further than he thought he could do. And of course he would gain the benefits from that. But of course the defilements aren't going to be too happy about that. But maybe once you pass a certain level, then you can overcome it. Sometimes Venerable Ajahn Anan would tell the monks of you just have to keep going and enduring to the point where you feel like you're almost about to die, and then you'll pass it. Just like drowsiness, if you feel like you're right to the end of how much you can endure, if you endure a bit more, then you'll be able to overcome it and pass it. So in that way, he was, you could say, training the monk in that way. So that's a story that he shared me. Sometimes maybe he would even punish monks, but of course in a non-physical way. Or, if they maybe should have been going to, say, morning chanting and they hadn't, he may tell them, go eat just plain rice or something. So you may have heard him say that as a suggestion to some of you to overcome certain things. He's actually, he might have given it more as a way to overcome certain defilements to the monks as well. So, okay, that day eat plain rice, or maybe do chanting in front of the lay people, something like that. I guess another thing is that he'd even give teachings about what metta was. Sometimes we feel like we have so much metta. Some people, I spread metta all the time. I'm imbued with metta. There was once when I remember we were going back from overseas, and we'd taking the van back to the monastery, and all the the blinds were closed in this van, and I was sitting up front, and apparently the one at front's meant to have the duty to keep the driver, driving safely. And so there was this really crazy driver sort of cutting in and out, and he cut in front of him and then sped off. And I thought to myself, I better say something to the driver to make sure he's safe, he won't get angry. So I told him, don't worry about it, forget about it. The karma will get him or something, let him receive his own karma. Then straight away from the back, in that row where the blinds were closed, Venerable Ajahn Anan just says out loud, may they be well. May they be safe. May they be safe. Maybe they're going to the hospital to give birth. And I had a look and I thought, there's no way that you could see that, whether it's someone giving birth or not, obviously. But to me, maybe that's a teaching of metta. Metta should be to all living beings, not just to the ones that you love or you feel good about, and wishing everyone to be well, even if they're doing things that are, could be reckless or stupid or etc. Or even about equanimity, upekkha, about, to have upekkha is about being indifferent, equanimous. People have to receive their own karma, that is true. But to actually wish or something that someone receives their own karma isn't upekkha. You could say that's more like ill will or a thought to harm, even just a thought there, not even just obviously no sort of bodily or verbal action, but just the thought could be a tendency towards ill will. And so you could say maybe actually Venerable Ajahn wasn't, teaching me more, maybe you could say, about having metta, or what metta was about. Metta should be able to overcome ill will, thoughts of ill will and thoughts of cruelty or to harm. And at other times, he would point out, you could say, where metta came from, when ill will came from. This was another, you could say, teaching that I got, that there was once when, there was once when I've been living in, Sydney for so long. I was born here. We don't tend to have in the city too many snakes. But when I went to the forests of Wat Mapjan, then there was once when basically I had to jump over a pit viper, and it basically tried to strike me as well, and somehow it missed me. But basically after that, had a bit of you could say even a phobia about snakes, thinking that, any branch must be a snake kind of thing. There was a sort of a joke in Wat Mapjan later on, after one Westerner had been bitten there, that the Thais would see a stick and think it's a snake, but a Westerner might think that see a snake and think it's a stick. So that's kind of what happened to me. But anyway, I had that, and I can't remember how much later on it was, but I was we posted a hall at the back of before going to evening chanting one day, and Venerable Ajahn Anan's other monk, like you could say, monk who helped him out, another attendant monk, he brought up one of these fake snakes. The snakes are actually out of wood, and they kind of, what do you call it? Wriggle, move like a snake, basically. And so this monk started to move it right in front of me like this, and I'm like, whoa. It's like shivering a little bit like this. And the Venerable Ajahn Nun's there and said, look, contemplate about sanya, which is perception. And I said something like, it's still don't like it, or something like that to him. But that was a teaching that you could say he gave me to bring up mindfulness with this perception. And it's, if you look at maybe the theory of it, once you have sense contact like this, you have a certain feeling come up from that contact, and it's painful or pleasurable or painful, or neither. So this was obviously a painful one. And then we know what happens next from feeling is craving, tanha, which is you have liking or disliking, and obviously this one was disliking. But that would lead to attachment, to birth, basically, and all forms of suffering. You could say it's maybe being born in a world where every stick is a snake, or the phobia is still there, carries on. And I don't know, maybe you can recognize this in your own life or not, but this was a teaching that, that I got. And it was like, if we learn about perceptions, is that there is the initial perception there, which is normal for everyone. Like you see that, maybe that snake, and you can see it's made out of wood. It's this color, gray. It's got this sort of movement, etc. And so there's that, which is good, which we need as humans. Obviously, we need to know what's dangerous, what's not. And this was, a snake is dangerous, right? But to know the difference between that and something not dangerous, obviously a wooden snake is not dangerous. But after that basic perception is the one that we say, oh, that's the one that our mind puts on it. Again, we can say another, supplementary perception, or the overlapping one maybe is better, overlapping perception. And that's the one of, I don't like it, I've had this in the past that's hurt me, or, that's been risky, and we bring that up. And there's a type that's coming from defilements, that's the one that leads to greed, hatred, delusion. If I was, maybe didn't have sila, then maybe you'd want to harm the snake, kill it, etc., because you have aversion, anger towards it. But if you have maybe more sila, then maybe you just have aversion, ill will towards it. And so he's pointing at that as bring up the other perception, sanya, of it's impermanent, maybe it's empty, like contemplate in whatever way for you to understand, bring mindfulness up with that perception. And so if we could see that, then we can overcome it. It's kind of in the way that someone said before, like a zebra, maybe they go out into the, they've just seen their whatever loved one, whatever friend, been killed by a lion, but they're out back in the field, grazing, you could say, eating, because they need to eat, obviously. And so humans are a bit different to that. We could carry things on, have that perception carry on for years and years, and it could still affect us, could be a phobia or fear. And so that's something to contemplate, and maybe the ones who's we could say enlightened, they've developed that wisdom, understanding. They only have that initial perception and take what's useful, what's not useful, they've seen beyond it and can have let that go. That's teaching a bit about how the ill will sort of arises. One other very inspiring quality that I've seen in Venerable Ajahn Anan over all these years is his purity. Purity here is a very great quality. I compare it to, we had quite a while ago, we had in the monastery here in Sydney, a kangaroo. It got caught on a fence, and after getting caught on the fence, we had to call the proper organisation to come in and sort of rescue it. And when the volunteer came in, he was just a new guy. He saw the injured kangaroo, and obviously we think kangaroo is cute, so he thought that. So, oh, so cute. And he's like, yeah, trying to give it food, and really you could see the metta coming from him. And then he goes close to kind of maybe touch it or help it, and the kangaroo, out of fear, scratches him, and he starts bleeding. And straight away he changes his mood of like, we gotta put it down, we gotta shoot it. And it just struck me of how much the mood, one's own mood, aramana, can change so quickly like that. Just, seeing something you like and you have that sort of metta, but then experiencing something you dislike, straight away you can change. And this is something that, being around Venerable Ajahn Anan, what I found the most inspiring quality was that he could always he had so much going on, but whatever it is, it felt like he never carried on to the next moment. It was always just taken up, the duty was done towards it, and then put down and moved on. And in that way, he could do a lot because of being able to let go, put things down. And it felt to me that out of all these years I've been so close to him, that it never really felt like there was any sort of lingering greed, hatred, or delusion there, there's not that mood. It always felt like it was coming from Dhamma or in line with Dhamma. And so in that way that he could always use the self, you could say, in an appropriate way. I remember in this retreat before, in the last one, we joined from over here, and he would be using a bit of English, and it's like, when people heard that, they would, feel happy, maybe even laugh a bit, and he'd use that to sort of maybe improve the mood of the whole thing. Maybe with a Dhamma talk might be very serious, everyone's, and then just sort of uplifting people in a different way. And he was very skillful at doing that. Whatever the occasion required, he could use the self in order to, achieve that. At times you see him as a big teacher, and that's what he needs to be for all his students and disciples. But at other times, when there's a very senior, respected monk, he'd be doing his duties just like a more junior monk. And that was always very inspiring to see, humbling, and you could see that, that's something that inspired ourselves in our own practice as well. Sometimes he could be very, humorous, like I said just then, if the mood required it. But at other times, maybe you'd see maybe monks talking a bit too much, and he could be very strict as well. And, walking over right there and saying something, and, the mood would change again. And so he's very skillful at doing that, or using the self. It always felt like it was, not held on to, basically. We had once here someone who, it was not that long ago. This is another story from this monastery first, is that there was someone here on a crutch, and he came here and he was sitting in the chair, and I thought, I could just give him, it was a Thai guy. So my teaching at that time was, maybe not teaching, something I told him was that, I shared to him a story of this person in Thailand. He was playing soccer one day. He was my driver for going to the monastery to Wat Mapchan. And so he would play soccer. And at one time he fell over, and he basically fell on his arm and broke it. And the time when he was telling me this story, he was driving with one hand, basically. And he said that when he fell, he straight away thought of when he was a young boy. And when he was a young boy, he went to the monastery and used a slingshot to shoot birds under the Bodhi tree. And that image came up to him straight away. And that man then said, for sure, I was receiving my karma from doing that bad action. And he was sure of that, and that he was, you could say, even happily driving me with just one arm. But as I said this story to this man with a crutch, this other Westerner on the other side of the room, he lifted up his leg and said that he had a prosthetic leg. And I thought, oh no, maybe I shouldn't have shared this story or what. But he said straight away that, I believe in karma as well. Because when I went to the hospital, I had a motorbike accident, and the first thing I heard when I woke up from being unconscious was the doctor was saying, you can take the neck brace off him. And he was so happy hearing this, because he knew then, I'm not going to be paraplegic. I'm not going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. And he said in hospital the whole time he was very happy, but he had lost his leg. And in one way, if you just stop here and just say, actually, if you look at it in one way and just look at that one good thing, then that could also help you overcome any aversion to, or ill will, or feeling suffering over another thing, you know. So he said he was very happy, and he said that, he believes in karma. He said, if you ride a motorbike, then I know that I have to accept the risk of riding it. So every time he rides a bike, he knows that he's in risk. There's always a danger because you're not safe. And I thought, wow, that was a good way to put it. And I then said to him that, that's actually a really good way to look at it. But if you expand it a bit more, you can see that, maybe life is similar. You know, you got on the bike of we call life, motorbike of life, and you're on this bike and you receive all the thrills, the enjoyment, the happiness that comes from it, right? But you also have that danger of getting into an accident, of these unfortunate situations. But we've chosen already to get on this bike, and so we need to accept it. Like you said, accept the risk from it. And obviously a motorbike can be used for very useful to go to A to B, etc. And in that way, we can also see our life here is very useful, that we can build merit, build goodness, practice the Noble Eightfold Path, practice the teachings of the Buddha, improve ourselves. But there is a risk with it. And so we have to see the risk, understand the drawbacks. And for me, the one this is my own simile or whatever, but the Arahant, the enlightened one, is one who's seen the drawbacks. They've seen clearly into the motorbike or life and death, and they've gotten off it. They don't want to get back on it because they know it's dangerous, right? It's not something that's fun and thrilling, and it's not all that. And so one who's stepped off it is peaceful. And you could say, that you hear of them saying, someone who's enlightened, Arahant, is beyond karma. They're beyond birth and death, beyond good and bad karma. And so maybe what does that mean? Lokutara, beyond the world. It's, if you say that world is, this motorbike, they're beyond it because they don't have to receive the karma, the good or bad, of being on that bike. They don't receive the thrills of it, but they also don't receive the drawbacks, the dangers, the suffering from it. And so then you could say, that one then is peaceful, right? They're peaceful from the motorbike, the birth and death, this cycle of birth and death. So that's just a interesting maybe way to look and understand it. That we've got on this bike, so we have to use it wisely and well, but ultimately, we have to see the drawbacks of it so we can get off it. Some people say, they're so bored of life, right? Someone who came here to the monastery, they said they had cancer for the second time. They said, I'm so bored of life. It's just so much suffering. And I guess that would be right. You can see the suffering there. So I just asked them then, well, he was a Thai person as well. So if you had a life where you had no cancer, would you want that? And they're like, yeah, of course, that's what I want. And that's kind of it, is that we still have this hope, this maybe delusion as well. If it could just be like this, then we'll be okay with it, But like riding a bike, it has both sides. You can't just take one and not take the other. In that way, we're developing our wisdom, our understanding in this way, so we understand more. So we're coming today, giving a few teachings, or maybe not teaching stories as such, and maybe you get some teachings from them. But one thing as well is that we really need to be able to open ourselves up to accept these teachings we're given. Sometimes, the sense of self can become very deluded, become so sure of oneself, but the simile is of like an open vessel compared to being a overflowing teacup, which Ajahn Anand's used before, saying like that. So we have to be like an open vessel, then we can accept a lot of good things, teachings, etc. And then we'll learn a lot more. We'll grow. But if it's overflowing teacup, obviously nothing more can go in. So there was once when we were going on Tudong, you could say. So Ajahn Anan had led us out, the whole group of monks, to the forest, and we'd been practicing there. And at the end of the trip, we were supposed to drive back to Wat Mapchan, and I had the idea that let's walk back. Sometimes when I have ideas like this, it tends to involve other monks as well. So another senior monk a few senior monks who didn't really want to, ended up having to go and walk back as well. So it took about 4 or 5 days like that to walk back, maybe 100 Ks, I think. And so, this senior monk there was told by Ajahn Anan, okay, that's a great idea, you go along as well. So anyway, so we'd been walking this one day, and the destination was to get to another monastery, branch monastery, by the end of the day, and we'd take a rest there and then continue walking the day after. So we've been walking all the way till 11 p.m. because we'd gotten lost, and we were nowhere near this monastery at 11 p.m. and the senior monk had a phone then, so we called Venerable Ajahn Anan, and Venerable Ajahn Anan said, all right, I'll send you someone to come pick you up from that monastery, a car, and take you back and you can rest in the monastery. But for myself, I'd made the determination that I'm not going to get on a car. That was my own personal determination, not the other monks. And so I heard this and I want to convince the other monks, let's just put up our umbrella nets in the forest, we'll walk the next day, we'll get there for sure. And basically went to the stage where Venerable Ajahn Anand's telling the passing that told the senior monk to tell me the story of Lungta Mahabua, or Ajahn Mahabua, of how he had made a determination once that he wouldn't receive any more food in his alms bowl. So he'd only get what was on alms, and anything else in the monastery he wouldn't take. And obviously, Lungta Mahabua is, a great Kruba Ajahn from our tradition. You're sure that he would follow up whatever he said he would do. And so he'd made that determination, and apparently Venerable Ajahn Mun came to him and opened his bowl lid and put some food in there. And Lungta Mahabua just had to accept it, that, that's given by the teacher, then you have to accept. And he was able to let go of his determination to that point because he was a teacher. And so basically hearing this story for myself, to break that determination felt like it would burn me up, to be honest. And in the end, I had to accept that, put down my views, you could say even conceit and ego, then put it down and accept the teachings of the teacher. And it was really difficult to do. And so he sent the car, and we got on the car, got to that monastery, and so could say I had probably a good rest that night anyway. But sometimes it can be that difficult. And in the talks, sometimes Ajahn Anan tells about how, when his samadhi concentration was very good, he felt like it had to be done this way, but Ajahn Chah would tell him, you should do it this way, or contemplate the body. And that's something similar. It's like, when you're very firm-minded, maybe it's difficult to accept any other teaching. So it's something that we have to be careful of. And maybe one last story is that we hear on this day that, we have to paripada puja, and everyone like I began with, that's how we offer up our practice, our Dhamma practice, as homage to the teacher, to the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. And especially on days like today, this is the day when we should do it, right? So whether it's you're doing your chanting and offering it, or your Dhamma practice, meditation, maybe joining like this, etc., then we offer it in that way. And this can be a very powerful practice. There was once when I was in my third rains retreat. That was 2009. In 2009, in that rains retreat, I had made the determination I'm going to stay up, do that Nesa Chik practice like that other monk that I told you about. So stay up, sitters practice all night. And there were other monks who did it as well. We had a group of monks, I think it was about 8 to 12 of us. So we'd stay up practicing at night. You could practice wherever you wanted in the monastery. And it was really tough, really difficult to do. The body wants to sleep at night. And, sometimes it'd be okay, but you'd notice that, even you lean back. If you sit in a chair, you're probably going to fall asleep. It was kind of like that. Or if you rest against the wall, you'd probably fall asleep as well. Body was so tired. Still rest a bit in the day, but no matter what, it was a tough practice. So I'd undertaken this, and it was kind of tough, but I made the determination already to do that for 3 months. And so hopefully this story is appropriate to tell. I don't know how many people in Wat Marpchan will understand, but in that rains retreat, then Venerable Ajahn Anan's mother was very, very sick, and we had to rush. Just himself and attendant monks would take we call sataha, sort of an emergency, what's translated as, allowable to take 7-day leave, basically, from the monastery, from the rains retreat, but you have to come back before the 7th dawn. And so we went to the hospital then. Venerable Ajahn Anand's mother was unconscious in the emergency room, and she was close to passing, basically. The doctors didn't think she would last. She would live for very much longer. So we rushed there at night, etc. And so we went there, and our practice was, we had a group of other monks, and other monks were visiting as well. But we would go in and do some chanting for her, and we do Itipiso, Swakato, Supatipanno, maybe 9 times, maybe more. And Jina Panjara Gatha would do that 9 times, chant, offer that. And the amazing thing was that every time we chanted, her heartbeat would come up. And the doctors were amazed at how this happened. And you could see that she could receive the sort of the chant, basically, or she developed her qualities so much that even being unconscious could receive the sort of power of that chant, or it'd bring up, the goodness, brighten up her mind, etc. But she was known to be a very, very good person. She stayed in the monastery, lived there, and obviously had a great Guru Ajahn as her son. So you could just imagine and everyone said she had very good character, etc. But I'd taken up this practice to stay up, and then when in my mind it was going to be like the last time of when if the Guru Ajahn tells you can stop that practice, then you can stop it. So my mind was thinking that, maybe Ajahn Anan will tell me that no problem, you can rest in the day, because you wouldn't have time to rest in the day because there'd be so much going on in the day. And so I'm thinking this in my mind, and Venerable Ajahn Anan, they're getting back to take a rest in another place in Bangkok. And I thought I could probably go along, etc. And Venerable Ajahn Anan turns to me and says, you're doing the Nesa Chik practice, so just stay here and practice here overnight. Look after my mother, etc. And so, so the only answer to that, again, is like what the other monk said, is krap. which means yes. And so all the monks gone back, and there's just a waiting room where there's seats there, and the room, where she had a private room, is only herself in there. And I had made I guess didn't really know what to do, but I made it my practice that I'd go in there and do chanting by myself. Like didn't need to be, a bit shy, because there'd be other monks around, but I could go in and chant, and I found it was really uplifting for me, even to overcome those hindrances of drowsiness that I'd been sort of fighting over, maybe in the monastery, able to overcome that. And so it was part of the practice of going there, chanting Itipisos and Jina Panjaragata 9 times like that, go out a bit and come back in again, and then chant like that. And like I said, every time then her heartbeat improved, you could say. And she lived for much longer than what the doctors thought, just because of that. And so in this, maybe the 2 points that you can take out of it is that all this practice that you're doing now, it does have results. You develop yourself, you do your chanting, you do your developing goodness, Dhamma practice, and later on, it will have its results. The mind will be brightened. You can see when people are practicing, when they grow older, and their minds become brighter, they're more happier to be alone, to practice, to chant, rather than someone who doesn't practice, become more maybe grumpy, irritated, etc. Easier and less patience, maybe nothing to do, and then that, and this you can see very clearly. But even moments before, close to passing to death, the mind will be uplifted. It can recognize chanting. Maybe the mind's in a very good place, or even you're able to practice with that sickness, that pain, and use that in your practice. So that's one thing that I got from that. But the second was the powerfulness of this Padipada Puja, because every time I went in, I felt like this was an offering that I was doing to my teacher through his mother. And I would go there, chant, and it'd bring up so much joy that I was able to do this, to offer this to my teacher, through chanting. And even now, reflecting on it, you can uplift the mind, and so all of you as well, hopefully, I'm sure you all have your own good experiences with that practice, and maybe you do your own practice as normal, but on maybe special days like this, you can offer that practice up, and it becomes something that uplifts you even more. You're doing the same practice, but you get maybe more benefits because you're devoting that. Maybe you have a set amount that you're doing, and you do that, and you feel so much more uplifted. The mind's brighter. Maybe you can overcome the hindrances even more than usual. And so that's something you can try, maybe days like this, Ajahn Chah Memorial, Ajahn Chah Days, or even for 3 days, the important Buddhist holy days, etc. There's always an opportunity for you to do that. And so it's a very powerful practice. And so I guess in conclusion then, we should develop this, mudita. We call this, when we come to a Kru Bhajan's birthday, it's like we're sharing mudita citta, which is like a mind of mudita, appreciative joy. We appreciate sympathetic joy. We rejoice at all those goodness, those good qualities. And so it is something that we have to recognize, those qualities, right? When we recognize, then we can respect them, give them importance, give homage to them, you could say. But also what it does is it also allows us to recognize those qualities in ourselves and try to develop them more, because we see the importance of them. Just like that metta, purity, the stories that I shared, they can inspire us to develop those qualities in ourselves more, to recognize them. And sometimes we can read the suttas and it can be a bit tough to read sometimes. But with these teachers who you really respect and honor that they've practiced it, they kind of live the Dhamma in a way. So when you're just seeing them, it can very, inspire you a lot to, in the practice, that it isn't something so dry and that there's this it's nibbana, enlightenment, there's nothing, it's not like that at all, And so being able to see this in, you could say in the flesh even, or you experience it, you see it, it can really inspire you, but also to develop that quality in yourself, further yourself in the practice. When you can recognize those good qualities in the teacher, in yourself, and you can see it in others as well, in your loved ones, and you can be more sympathetic or focus on those qualities much more, right? You rejoice in their happiness, their goodness, and that's what mudita is. You're rejoicing, you wish that they gain more happiness, or it prolongs their happiness, their success, all the good things they enjoy, you wish that it can last and continue on. And not just your loved ones, but then other people as well. You can also still rejoice, have that recognition of those good qualities in them as well. And all the way to people that maybe you have ill will, jealousy, aversion, irritation for, you can put that aside and just focus on just those good qualities. Just look at that, like the mango example before, just focus on the good. Take the ripe part, don't take the rotten part. And that can overcome any sort of envy, ill will, jealousy. So I hope that some of these stories and maybe teachings is helpful, gives inspiration to you. Also apologize if any of this is inappropriate, these stories. But hopefully we're all sort of kind of on the same team. We all have a lot of faith. We're all here with great faith in the teacher, in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. So hopefully can inspire you in your practice. And I hope that we can give our puja, our padipada puja on this day, and we could say on this journey through samsara of happiness and suffering, birth and death, that will all be supports for each other to grow in good qualities, to grow in the Dhamma, and so that we may all attain the liberation, the complete freedom from suffering.